All right, thank you, Ray. Well, if you're the type of person who tunes into NewMR events, you can hardly have missed the whole library of behavioral economics books that have poured out of the typewriters of various academics in the last few years. Nudge, Thinking Fast and Slow, and Predictably Irrational, among others, have hammered into us the idea that we're all irrational. We don't make choices that are in our best interests, and we're always making mistakes. We don't even know what we want in life. How can we be trusted to make our own decisions? We're a bunch of idiots. Even the name of my own agency, as Ray says, the Irrational Agency, plays up this idea, and it's a name that I suppose it was a slightly tongue-in-cheek, but we have this idea that has started to become conventional wisdom in this industry, that consumers are irrational. Well, today I'm going to tell you that this is all nonsense. Consumers aren't irrational at all. Not that they're necessarily rational either, and thank goodness for that, in fact. If we really did behave the way that economists tell us we should, we'd all be dead. The only people who can make decisions in the way economists tell them to are people with specific types of brain damage. These people can't use their intuitions or feelings to make choices. They have to calculate one by one all the costs and benefits of every decision they make. As a result, they can't make any practical choices in life, not even whether to get out of bed in the morning. And people like this end up unable to live outside of an institution. We probably all experience this on a small scale. They call it analysis paralysis. Anytime you've found it really hard to make a decision between two options, and you've put it off and thought it over and worked it out and still been no closer to deciding, you've been in this mode. But eventually you probably picked one path or the other, and chances are it probably worked out okay. But imagine that you're thinking like that and you weren't in a comfortable office or in your living room in a modern economy, but you're instead in a threatening environment with only just enough food to survive on and a wide variety of creatures waiting to kill you. In other words, imagine that you were your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother 300 generations back. And imagine that you're there on the savannah and you stop to calculate and weigh up the potential costs and benefits and the associated probabilities of every decision before you make any choices. It wouldn't be long before you ended up as lion food. So any rational person, and this is the economist's definition of rational, people who weigh up all those costs and benefits and discount them by the time that things are going to happen and the probability that they're going to happen. Any person who's economically rational in that way would have been quickly eaten out of the gene pool. Only those who are willing to make decisions quickly, find shortcuts, and basically do what's good enough would have survived. And those people are your ancestors and mine, and the ancestors of all the consumers who buy our products. It's not just a matter of whether our brains are big enough or if we just happen to be a bit too stupid and slow to calculate the right answers. It's mathematically impossible for any imaginable creature to calculate all the pros and cons and predict all the future consequences of their actions and weigh them up and make decisions every minute or every second of the day. If you dedicated all the computers in the world, programmed by the smartest programmers, had them operated and assisted by all the people in the world, and gave them 100 years to calculate the exact right answer for what's the best sandwich that you should order today, they wouldn't even be able to do that. There's too much information in the world. It's a complex place, and everything influences everything else. Nothing and nobody could possibly process all that, even given an infinite amount of time to do it, and certainly not in time to dodge that lion. It's just not an option. So instead of calculating everything, we use heuristics. Heuristics, contrary to the impression given in some of those books, they're not flawed or error-prone ways of thinking. They're not mistakes that we make. They're actually brilliantly designed techniques to let you make a good enough decision in less than a second, less than a fraction of a second, 99.9% of the time, usually without even being aware that you're doing it. The only reason that we can navigate the world in a practical way and a safe way is because we have these heuristics to make most of our decisions for us. The heuristics are what let us choose products we know we'll like. They're what help us to drive to work safely, or even talk to people without having to calculate and plan out every individual sound that every word will be made up of. It's heuristics also that tell us what brands we can trust and let us know we're not being ripped off by a high price. So that one time in 1,000 that the heuristics don't give us the right answer, well, there's still a better hit rate than any computer algorithm you can think of. Sure, algorithmic step-by-step rational calculations can give us the right answer to a very small number of carefully defined mathematical problems. And there's no harm in learning those situations so you know when not to use a heuristic. You may not want to use a heuristic to work out your tax bill at the end of the year. You might want to do the arithmetic. But don't start believing the heuristics are wrong or bad or useless. And above all, don't let them tell you consumers are irrational, not even someone who runs an agency named after irrationality. Sometimes I wish we just picked a nice acronym like GFK or TNS or NewMR, but there you go. Don't let your fantasy of that unattainable, perfect calculating machine be the enemy of recognizing what a brilliant object your brain is, to have found its way past those lions on the savannah, through all the dangers of history, and past the supermarket till without buying the National Enquirer. Consumers aren't irrational, but you might be irrational if you think they are.